Outside the Dutch embassy in Kiev, they're grieving as if for their own. But these aren't relatives of the nearly 200 Dutch nationals who lost their lives yesterday. These are Ukrainians. For weeks, we have shed our tears over our own dead, Ukraine's president said today. We have tears left for the innocent victims of this crime. Today, Ukraine mourns with you. Monitors from the OSCE reached the crash site this afternoon. They said rebel forces tried to hinder them in their investigations. MH17 was brought down by a missile, this much we know. But there are still many unanswered questions. Who fired the rocket and where did the launcher come from? Kiev says this unverified footage shows a Soviet or Russian Buk surface-to-air missile system on the move near the crash site, missing 2 missiles. Here's a similar model on display on Red Square in Moscow. But the Ukrainian military uses the Buk system too. At the end of June, rebels bragged they'd captured a Buk launcher when they overran a military base in eastern Ukraine. At around the same time as the Malaysian passenger jet crashed, a rebel leader by the name of Igor Strelkov claimed on social media to have downed an Antonov military transport plane. After news of the passenger jet broke, the post was deleted. So did the rebels shoot down the plane thinking it was a Ukrainian military aircraft? And if so, did they get help from Russia? At meetings of the military top brass behind closed doors, I'm told they admit they can't be certain whether this rocket launcher was brought across the border from Russia or captured by rebels here in Ukraine. But they do believe that whoever fired the missile must have had help from the Russian side, especially in targeting. The idea that this plane was brought down by a bunch of Cossacks, one senior officer said, is as ludicrous as a horseman driving a Formula One car. General Igor Romanenko was deputy chief of Ukraine's defense staff until 2010, and he's an expert on rocket technology. And he's convinced that the rebels couldn't have acted alone.
They don't have the specialists, so they're using the Crimean template. Russian military service personnel without identification marks on their uniforms come in alongside the rebels. The whole thing was prepared by a Russian team.
In Moscow, President Putin denied any Russian involvement and laid the blame for the crash squarely at Kiev's door.
I express my condolences on behalf of the Russian Federation. I want to underline that this tragedy would not have happened if this land was at peace, or at least combat operations had not been resumed. It's obvious that the state on whose territory this happened bears the responsibility for this.
But in Washington, intelligence analysts say the downing of MH17 follows a disturbing pattern.
We also know that this is not the first time a plane has been shot down in eastern Ukraine. Over the last several weeks, Russian-backed separatists have shot down a Ukrainian transport plane and a Ukrainian helicopter, and they claimed responsibility for shooting down a Ukrainian fighter jet. Moreover, we know that these separatists have received a steady flow of support from Russia. This includes arms and training. It includes heavy weapons, and it includes anti-aircraft weapons.
On Independence Square in Kiev, the barricades are still there, months after the old president was toppled. But Ukrainians still come here, and not only to pay their respects to those who died fighting in their revolution. Yulia Petushinska's homemade poster needs no translation. Like many in this city, she sees Russia as the aggressor and believes Europe and America are letting him get away with it. You can fight Putin, she says, but you've got to want to fight. This is where it all began, here on Independence Square. First, here at the barricades with peaceful protests, but then with dead bodies lying right here on the streets and sniper fire whizzing up and down over these cobblestones. Now, the fighting may have moved east now, but as you can see, Ukraine is still very much unfinished business. Today, in the eastern city of Luhansk, shelling left more dead bodies in the streets. The fighting has been going on for months now, bringing misery at home, but largely ignored abroad. But the search for the bodies of the passengers of MH17, for the men, women and children who were shot down over the fields of eastern Ukraine, has propelled this conflict back to the forefront of the international agenda. Once the facts of this tragedy become clearer, Russia and the West may be forced to deal with the problem.